Hello, my name's Mitch,
And I'm Carly.
and we're presenting on the conflict between Spain and Catalonia.
Okay, and we'll play this video to explain more.
Demonstrations, and for example today is a student strike. This is something that is not only about this weekend, because in the 1st of October of 2017 we saw the people trying to vote and the police going against. This week is like an ending of a political cycle. On Monday we went to the airport. We went past Philippe, and we saw police that used the violence against us, so we said enough. The media saying that we are the violent people, and it's not that way because we only are using self-defense.
But loads of young people are burning bins on the streets. That's not self-defense, that's just burning stuff. How is that going to help?
I think that is self-defense, because we have seen all the cars with the police going down the street trying to go against us, so using these ways is the only way we can protect ourselves.
Your parents behind you, do they support you going on the streets?
Yes, my mother lives in Mallorca, but I'm always talking to her, and she's asking me if I'm okay, but she's not going to ask me to go home. Maybe in the streets at night it's only young people, but we have many people, like old people, parents, all families behind us.
They don't speak for the majority, because the support for independence is not majoritarian.
I don't think this is going to anywhere. They can have the ideology as they want, but the thing is that whatever you are not agree with, you have to do it in the right way and not blocking the airport, not burning everything, because that's not a good way to do it. These men that are now in prison, they have created all this, so I cannot say they are good people or they shouldn't be in prison. Look what they have created. This is because they have destroyed the convivence in Catalonia.
Okay, so just to briefly recap what that video said. 2017, the state of Catalonia within Spain tried to secede, and it didn't go well, and now in 2019 there's still protests because of what happened in 2017.
Yeah, and some of the reasons Catalonia wants to secede from Spain is there's a large difference between culture and the language, which we can trace back to historical events, which leads us to our thesis. Can you read that?
Guiding question and thesis.
And guiding question as well.
So the guiding question is, what has led to the current conflict between Catalonia and Spain?
And our thesis that we put together was the conflict between Spain and Catalonia can be traced back to 1469, when the unification of Spain began.
So now to help visualize this a little bit better, we wanted to do a little interaction with the class. So we're going to divide the class into 3 groups, and fortunately
You're already divided.
you're already divided into 3 groups. So Hong Kong, you guys are going to be Catalonia. Mauna Kea, you guys are the state of Aragon. And what's the other group? Whatever the other group.
The rest of Spain.
The other group is the rest of Spain. Yeah, but what's the okay. The other group is the rest of Spain. Okay, so we're going to imagine now that before 1492, I forget.
69. 1469.
1492 is when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Okay, so it's in the 1400s, and Catalonia and Aragon are 2 independent states, and they are joined. Okay, so Catalonia, you guys are put up with Aragon because your kings got married, or your king and queen got married. Then 1469 comes. King of Aragon, King Ferdinand of Aragon, gets married to Queen Isabella of Castile, which is basically the rest of Spain, you guys.
And we have a map here to show you.
So that is how Catalonia joined Spain in the first place. And we can see here, just in the root cause of it, what we say is the root cause is that Catalonia didn't even really have a say in them joining Spain, because it was Aragon's king, the country they were yoked to, that was married into the rest of Spain, and Catalonia didn't really have a voice. They've never really had a voice in joining Spain, not joining Spain, and we wanted to help visualize that by doing this activity.
And then, as you can kind of see, the sudden joining together the areas of the country, that it forced together 2 different cultures, which is kind of bound to clash. And I related this to globalization in a negative way of globalization as just the forcing of 2 cultures going forward throughout history. And then...
Yeah, differences in culture that she just brought up. So Catalonia and mainland Spain, the rest of Spain, have completely distinct cultures. For example, in Catalonia, they don't even speak the same language as Spain. In Spain, they speak Castellano, which is Castilian Spanish, what we now know as Spanish. And in Catalonia, they speak Catalan, which is actually more similar to French than it is to Spanish. And here we even have a chart that shows the differences between Catalan and Spanish. I don't know if anyone here speaks Spanish or not, but I do, and I can't understand Catalan to save my life. For example, the phrase "tu acabas" in Spanish is "tu acabes" in Catalan. It's similar, but it's not the same. And all of this is, well, this is just one part of this conflict and the difference of culture, the clash of cultures that happens between Catalonia and Spain. They also have distinct culinary foods,
architecture, ideals, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
Another event we kind of wanted to highlight was the reign of King, Philippe. Starting in 1714, that was when Spain more officially became unified and Catalonia was officially part of Spain. But this is also where the suppression of Catalan culture started. A lot of Catalan political institutions were banned. They suppressed their culture. A lot of them were even allowed to speak their own language, and this is kind of where like the resentment between the 2 areas started all the way back in 1714. Okay. And then another thing we wanted to highlight was the Industrial Revolution. A lot of the area of Catalonia is much wealthier than the rest of Spain today, and this kind of started in the Industrial Revolution. Some of the things that caused that was Barcelona was like a major hub for the cotton industry, and it kind of got a head start in the Industrial Revolution from the rest of Spain.
Yeah. And also the fact that Catalonia, Barcelona, the main city of Catalonia, is strategically placed on the Mediterranean Sea, helped make it a very important port, which is also very important for globalization, which we've already brought up, and obviously the Industrial Revolution, which was another important historical concept that we've tied into this presentation.
Yeah, and another thing I thought was interesting was Barcelona was actually considered the only challenge to Great Britain in like the textile industry at that time. So it kind of really shows you how far ahead they were. And then we have some numbers of kind of the economy today. Catalonia accounts for 19% of Spain's GDP, which is what does that stand for? What is it? Like
Gross domestic product.
Thank you. Which makes it the wealthiest area in Spain. It also accounts for over 25% of Spanish exports because of the port in Barcelona.
So this is important for today in the conflict between Catalonia and Spain, because the Catalonian people feel that since they're the wealthiest, the most producing area of the country, that they should be receiving more money in taxes, but they aren't. They're paying more money in taxes than they're getting back, which is also creating more resentment of the Spanish state and has added to this secession sentiment that is within Catalonia, that they feel that they're being yoked to Spain and they're being held back by Spain, basically.
Right, and you kind of like see a little bit of distrust in the government in Catalonia and the rest of Spain, because they feel that the rest of Spain is kind of just using them and not giving back to the government like they should.
Pre-Civil War.
Yeah, so before this, so we'll talk about this later, there was a civil war in Spain in the 1930s, but before that, kind of what led up to it was starting in 1913, Catalonia was given a small level of autonomy in their government, which that kind of means that not necessarily they become an independent state, but they do have more independence as a region, so they were able to kind of set up their own political institutions. This also kind of brought back the culture. They started, bringing their language back more. People became more proud of their culture. But so they got that autonomy in 1913, but the government repealed that in 1925, which led to the formation of left-wing political parties, so people who wanted more democracy and a Republican form of government, which gained a lot of popularity in Catalonia. And so these parties actually won the elections in 1931, which made Spain a republic country.
Yeah, so earlier we showed a picture of what the Spanish flag actually looks like. What's happening to the laptop?
Is it? No, it's still going, it says.
Okay.
I better hope it's still recording.
So this flag here is the flag of the Spanish Republic. They changed the flag when they had this republic in the 1930s. I'm really stressed out about that, but whatever. And yeah, so as she was explaining, this left-wing government was formed, and that is very crucial to what led into the Civil War, because it was this clash between right and left, and this rise of the left here is what led into the Civil War, which is a very, very, very important event that has led to the secession of Catalonia.
Right, and you had most people in Catalonia supporting the Republican government, the left-wing parties, and then where you found the people who weren't supporting that was throughout the rest of Spain. So then starts the Spanish Civil War. It's still has like the time though.
Okay. Well,
So I think
if it doesn't work, we'll just tell her.
okay. So yeah, then we lead into the Spanish Civil War, which officially started in 1936, and it ended with the Republican form of government being revoked, and also led to the dictator Francisco Franco being in power after the Civil War ended in 1939.
Yeah, and this was also very, very important because it led to a lot of, well, it absolutely decimated the country, the Spanish Civil War. There is a painting here, I think we already changed the slide, but there is a painting here of a very famous painting called Guernica.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it portrays this city that was in the countryside of Spain, Guernica, that was absolutely decimated because of the Spanish Civil War. So if you could imagine that the entire country was basically leveled and decimated by the Civil War, which was what led to Francisco Franco coming into power. It was his drive and desire to unify the country again, to bring them back and to make them prosper again. That was what led Francisco Franco into power. And it was also a very dominating part of his politics, was this idea that we have to unify Spain again. And something that came out of that, unfortunately for the people of Catalonia, was that he took away a lot of their liberties.
Yeah, so that also began more suppression of Catalan culture. Again, banning their political institutions. Catalan wasn't allowed to be spoken in official settings, so it couldn't be spoken in schools, in government buildings, that sort of thing. Also wanting to note that Franco was actually a fascist leader who was supported by Hitler. So this is kind of like around the time shortly before the beginning of World War II. So we have Hitler around who supported them, kind of giving you an idea of what kind of person, what kind of leader he was. And yeah, a lot of suppression of Catalan culture started or continued at that time.
Yeah, and we can even tie this back into globalization a little bit. So Franco was very good friends with Hitler and Mussolini. But Spain, if any of you know this or not, I don't know, but Spain did not participate in World War II, unlike Italy and Germany, because Spain was so decimated by their own civil war that happened right before it.
Right.
So this is another tying into other countries, historically, what has led to where we are today with respect to Catalonia and Spain. So yeah, and Franco reigned in Spain for a very, very long time, almost 40 years until his death.
Yeah, so after he died in 1975, Spain kind of recovered back from that time and went back to more of a democratic form of government. And they also revised their constitution in 1978. So you had a new Spanish constitution, which brought back that limited autonomy in Catalonia, again, kind of bringing back their political institutions. They could speak their language more freely again, but there still was that resentment there from, it was so near in their history, there was still a lot of that resentment there.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I wanted to highlight as well is kind of, you can see there's a lot of this back and forth of the Spanish government be like, hey, Catalonia, we'll give you some space. Oh, wait, we're going to take that back. Here is it again. Then they take it back again. And I feel like that really led to a lot of distrust between the Spanish government and the Catalan government and citizens, which is kind of why now they just don't even want to be a part of the government. They just want full independence.
And I forgot to mention, this picture seems random, but this is actually me for my mission. This is Franco's grave. It was in one of the areas I served in.
Right.
It's the largest cross in the world. Just a little side note. Thought it would make this presentation a little bit more interesting since I have lived this. I was in Spain not too long ago, and thought we would just tie that into it briefly. Sorry.
Okay, and so coming back into kind of the current conflict going on right now, what started the conflict that's going on now is in 2017, the Catalonia government put a referendum on the ballot, which is basically kind of like when you have the voters vote on one single question, and that question was, should Catalonia secede from Spain? And so that happened in 2017. A majority of those voters who did turn out to vote voted that yes, they should secede, but then the Spanish government decided it was illegal to vote for that, kind of leading more up to now.
Yeah, well, this was a huge, huge deal in 2017 when it happened, because not only did the Spanish government, the national government, condone this vote as unconstitutional, but they sent in the National Guard in to shut down the voting in Catalonia, which is why the votes that were received were considered tainted anyways, because most people weren't even able to vote. But the Catalonian government took in the votes that they did receive, came in majority in favor of secession, and they moved forward with it, actually. They said they were going to try to secede, and even wrote
Like a
Declaration of Independence from Spain, trying to follow suit with the United States with
way back when.
The Revolutionary War, trying to follow this process of secession, but the Spanish national government said no, that's not happening. They actually exiled the leaders of Catalonia. They fled the country themselves because of fear of being charged of treason.
Right.
And then Article 1, I should have put this in the PowerPoint, Article 135, if I'm not mistaken, was invoked in the Constitution, and the Spanish national government took control of the state of Catalonia for a while until things were more stable. And then this was kind of the situation, and there was all this tension because of the dramatic vote that happened in the protests and everything that happened in 2017. And then just recently in 2019, which was kind of demonstrated by the video we started with, the Catalonian leaders were actually put on trial and were condemned and put in jail for promoting treason and all this revolution basically happening within Spain, which has led to the current protests and all of the backlash within Spain right now.
So in conclusion, we concluded that the main historical event that led up to all this conflict was the marriage of the King and Queen of Castile and Aragon back in 1469, which is what started this unification of Spain and started this just kind of shoving two cultures together, as well as just the differences in the culture and in the economy, as well as the Civil War is a big part as well. That has all contributed to this conflict.
Yeah, and so we wanted to tie this back to the activity we did at the beginning. So, group that represents Catalonia, how do you guys feel now, knowing all of this that we've just presented, knowing that you weren't really ever given an opinion and whether or not you could join the country of Spain? How do you guys feel about all of this fighting and protests that are going on for and against your secession? It's just a question to ponder to help us better put ourselves into the scenario here. It's an interesting thing to think about that, nowadays we look at a map and we just assume that the state lines, the national lines are set in stone, and that the countries and the people that live within those countries identify as the country that they live in, and that people generally feel at peace with the country they live in. But that's not always the case, as we have a case here that the history of the formation of countries isn't always very clean, and it's not always a very pretty, happy story with happy lines set, creating borders between countries that sometimes people are, I just spit really far. People are not pleased with the country they live in, and that's the case with Catalonia and Spain, and we will see what happens in the future. My personal bet is that nothing is going to happen, that Catalonia is going to have to stick with Spain, that they're never going to get secession, and that's just how it is.
No. And I think this is also a really good example showing how conflicts today really have such deep roots, and these protests, it isn't something like all of a sudden they're like, oh, we want independence. Like, no, this has been going on for hundreds of years, and there's many, many factors to consider when looking at conflicts like these and when coming to opinions on these sorts of issues. So it's really important to like look back on history and how everything has affected the conflicts today.
Does anyone have any questions?
Pretend questions were asked.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit short.
Yeah, I think we can. I'm just gonna